We will give folks a minute to join. And Mary, hold on.
Oh, okay.
Great. Okay.
Oh.
We will give folks a minute to join. I am on the road at a meeting in Framingham.
Yep.
So I'm sitting in the lobby.
Oh my God. Okay.
Here, are you going to share your screen? Okay, let me give you.
Yes, go ahead.
Get that set.
Okay. All right. So, and I have a medication. I think
as folks are joining, we know we had sharing the mic yesterday. And we will have a 9:30 call next week. We will be closed on Thursday and Friday, but we'll be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So if you see there. So Pierre, I'm going to turn things over to you. And the first question that we ask all 9:30 callers is for everybody to share a little bit about you, how you came to be in your current role. And as 9:30 call connections continue, we met at the Research Summit during the poster session, where I stopped by to hear a little bit more about what you're doing. So we're so happy you could be with us. And we look forward to hearing your update.
Great. Greetings, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Amy. My name is Pierre-Valery Tchetgen. I'm an assistant professor at Northeastern University in the jointly appointed in music and art design. Just completed my 3rd year. And I came to Northeastern from the West Coast. I did my PhD at UC Berkeley in the Graduate School of Education. So I'm coming from education, and so it's good to be among kindred spirits. My research trajectory through grad school sort of landed me in early childhood based on the issues that I was concerned with. I've never actually taught beyond or below middle school in a formal sense, but very much passionate about early learning experiences and supporting teachers and parents in reimagining ways that we can make those more favorable for children. I come to this call by way of introduction from Kimberly Lucas, whom I was introduced to by a colleague at Northeastern, and she's the one who first told me about the 9:30 call. So I've been able to attend a couple calls, and as Amy mentioned, I was also part of the research summit recently, where I shared some of the work that I'll be sharing a little bit about today. Focus on some of the work that's taking place in my research lab, the Urban Griot Collaborative, which I have a link down here if anybody's interested. So I think I am originally I was born in Cameroon, which is in West Africa. My mother was from Ghana, and I that's pretty much, I think, the extent of what I think is relevant for me to share today. It would be good to know who's on the call today. I'm hoping this can be a sort of an interactive co-design session. I will present some things, but I'm also hoping that we can create together at some point. So if you feel moved to, you can please share your institutional affiliation and professional role in the chat. I understand that I'll get access to that later. So that would be good to know sort of a little bit more about my audience today. So is that sufficient, or any other questions in terms of introduction, Amy?
That sounds great. Thanks so much.
All right. So to get us started, for today, the focus of my work has been very much centered around some of these questions that I have printed here, which I hope that we can ideate and reflect on together today. Essentially, how might we reimagine the ecology and pedagogy of early childhood from a culturally grounded perspective? Um, Meaning, how might cultural practices that children are already exposed to and familiar with by virtue of their family background, their community history, and how might, from a sort of cultural funds of knowledge perspective, how might some of that inform our practice as educators and caregivers in their lives? um, what would that look like and feel like in your schools and communities? And what would that mean for young children, their parents and teachers um, on a practical level? Again, this is
Sorry, Amy, can you just mute your audio? We're getting some background noise there still.
Sorry about that.
Thanks, Pierre.
thank you. Yeah, so these are some sort of some of the questions that I hope can orient us today, just in terms of a general ballpark of what the work that we've been doing has been about. And as an example of how we've approached these questions, I will share a couple examples. One, which was sort of the inception of my sorry, I got some doors open here. Of my dissertation, which was a study called the Urban Griot Playground, which took place, the inaugural study took place in 2019 in California, and was a month-long family workshop, essentially focused on this first question in terms of proposing and evaluating an embodied approach to literacy learning. And in particular, from the, in terms of the cultural background that this study was grounded in the culture of the oral tradition and drum language in particular. This sort of became one of the issues that I got fascinated with throughout my graduate studies, and sort of understanding the spectrum of literacies and the connections from a multimodality perspective that we can draw within them. So this study was focused on engaging a group of homeschooling families through a 4-week curriculum that is basically the Urban Griot Playground, centered around music and movement, voice, rhythm, and movement, essentially, and making connection to literacy and STEM in that context, all through the cultural practice of drumming and drum communication, which for those not familiar, around the world, but for myself, also, more particularly in West Africa, the talking drums are a longstanding tradition that position sort of the drum not simply as a musical instrument, but as a communication tool that has been used for centuries to convey messages at distances. And although in the traditional sense, drum languages sort of operate as speech surrogates, in the sense that they reproduce the prosody of speech in a stylized way over the drums. But given that most of the languages are tonal, this makes the transmission still pretty intelligible. And so, inspired by this concept, I, along with sort of my dissertation committee, got sort of focused on seeing which aspects and how, from a design-based research perspective, how some of these aspects of drum language and drum communication could be integrated into early literacy learning. And this happened through both a sequential curriculum, which I'll discuss in a second, as well as the development and playtesting of some new digital tools that are inspired by this drum language paradigm. So here you have an image of one of those tools in question, which is the mobile version of an app, rhythm game, that essentially allows for children to explore word forms and word spellings through through rhythmic call and response, through a system called algorithms, which just briefly is for the study. For research purposes, was inspired by the Morse code, but sort of normalized to 4 beats to land that within the musical space, and as well as some tangible tools. One particular called the drum ball, which is a physical controller that works in tandem with these applications. This study, as I mentioned, originally in the inaugural study was over the course of a month. And so we had some committed participants, primarily mothers and their children or their child in most cases. And the curriculum was built sequentially in the sense of scaffolding those essential literacy skills, starting from alphabet knowledge to, as I mentioned, word forms, and exploring into narrative and storytelling. Drum language is very rich in proverbs and various types of appellations and metaphors and oral histories, poetry that are forms of literature, but simply performed as rhythm, and building up to some digital interactions. So covering a broad spectrum of multi-literacies there, from visual to oral to digital. And one of the core aspects of this setting was, again, building on the concept of the drum circle as a mode of organization for the learning, and to give everybody an equal footing within the space. And so you have here a sort of a visualization of kind of how the space was organized, with each parent and child dyad around the circle. And each session lasted for about 60 to 90 minutes tops. Again, the focus here was on preschoolers, so ages 3 to 6, very much at that stage where they're first learning and getting exposed to language learning and literacy, and learning how to manipulate a pen, and sort of first experiences in forming their letters, etc. From this inaugural study, some of the findings were that the Urban Griots, the curriculum, and allowed for a scaffolding of literacy skills and literacy behaviors in the young children, through, again, the visual symbolism, which has both literate and musical applications, and the multimodal engagement with some of the digital tools. Another finding was that It really encouraged the children's social participation skills, which I tie back to sort of the circle organization of the space and a lot of the call and response and embodied practices that were integrated within the curriculum, um, as well as supporting the emotional intelligence and early identity formation around within this context. So and the second example, so that was the inaugural study, which again, as I mentioned, was back in 2019. Since then, but some of the limitations, which I guess I should say, mention first before moving on to the next slide, some of the limitations were that the prototypes of the digital tools that were designed for this purpose were not robust enough uh, for us to get really a clear sense of the efficacy of this method. And so for the past few years, I came over to Northeastern for a postdoctoral um, fellowship back in 2021, which in the music technology department, which was focused mainly on the redesign and reformulation of those prototypes, so that we could eventually resume these studies with different populations. Now that I'm on the East Coast, and so that work has involved some undergraduate and graduate students from variety of disciplines, ranging from mechanical engineering, as far as the physical controller is concerned, as well as game design, computer science, and experience design, who have helped to reformulate the strategy for facilitating these experiences. And the outcome of that redesign was the creation of a learning kit that could facilitate the dissemination of the curriculum and of this approach to parents and to teachers, for them to take up within their communities and schools. Because as I mentioned, this was more of a focal study where parents had to sign up and be in attendance for the 4 weeks, and which we found was sort of a barrier to entry, given the hectic schedules and the logistical issues in trying to put something on like that. So the second aspect of the extension of that work then has been, this is more recently, um, has been to also engage design students and faculty, and this has been at Northeastern so far over the past year and a half, in what we call a series of co-design clinics to essentially play test this learning kit, which you see here to the right. So we call this now the Griot Quest learning kit, which is its current form, as well as some of the digital assets associated with it. I've included here a QR code for you to get some sense of what this experience a little bit is like. And from that series of co-design clinics, essentially, it's helped us to refine our stakeholder map, in the sense of clarifying exactly who are the relevant players that we need on board in order to roll out something like this, as well as some action items for how to optimize the design. Given that our rationale in playtesting this first with college students and faculty was that if they could not understand and sort of take this up on their own, neither would parents and teachers and children, right? So really some great feedback we got from them, and that has led to a much more robust approach that we are now looking to take to the communities themselves, and also involve them within this co-design process on the way to eventually resuming the Urban Griot Playground workshop series. So if there, if you have any questions, you feel free to interrupt me at any point. Otherwise, I'll just sort of keep going with what I have planned. I know we have very little time, but I thought we might take some a chance while we have a variety of people on the call to imagine together based on some of, and again, what I'm sharing is just one perspective, right? And so as a musician myself, I've always been passionate by drumming ever since my early days in schools. And so going into education, I had no idea that I would end up here, right? This was sort of one thing leading to another, and that has sort of pointed me towards this direction of thinking about the integration and the leveraging of cultural practices at large as an approach for 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 praxis, right? In terms of educational praxis. So turning this over to you now, just to think about from your perspective, how can I, meaning you, make early literacy and STEM learning more engaging and fun in my classroom, in my community? And I'm sure that there's already a lot that you're doing in that regard. But to push it a little further, what might be some embodied cultural practices, especially given the diversity of our communities, that we might consider to integrate within the ECE curriculum? What might that look like? What might that feel like? What might that imply and mean for children's early experiences of literacy, with the understanding that, I'm preaching to the choir here, but that the challenges of in those early stages sort of set the tone for the potential of achievement moving forward. So, this has sort of been my rationale in why this preschool ages 3 to 6 is such a critical time frame to think about and to really focus on at this time.
If we go to the chat, I just want to share. So Leslie Baker shared. I'm Leslie Baker, Program Director for the Center of Child Care Careers, Family Services, Central Mass. And she's studying mindfulness. We should talk about mindfulness and social emotional and learning. And then Nicole kind of connected. Yes, we should connect because I think one thing that you mentioned around early educators is so much of what we do is through play and fun and learning. And we've often talked about how other parts of the education system, could learn from how we think about student-centered, how we think about fun. Don Danette shares, we know that music and movement are key to joyful and efficient learning, and I find many educators shy away from these pathways. Finding ways to help educators feel more comfortable seems critical to me. So that point of sometimes when people walk in and see all this fun and play going on, they're like, well, when are you going to start the learning part of it? So how do we help educators feel strong and confident in kind of some of those practices? It might look like play, but we know that there's a lot of different things in learning going on. Thanks, Donna.
Absolutely. Thank you for those for those comments. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more in terms of the need, which is part of why I'm even here today, right? This
Right.
recognition that we can keep on designing within the lab and innovating and thinking about the next thing, but if we don't get the educators on board to think about what are the pain points and what are some of the possibilities that we can imagine, then we're sort of cutting ourselves short.
That's right. That's
Uh,
right. There's Marissa said I'm also thinking about syllables and speech sounds and the direct connection to rhythm and drums.
Absolutely, and now you really speak in my language, because as I mentioned, the initial prototype was sort of for as a proof of concept was inspired by the Morse code, which is really not
Oh,
how
wow.
the the traditional drum language works, right? It doesn't work by breaking down words into their individual letters, but operates more at the level of the prosody of the speech, which is essentially these syllable sounds, right? And how though their pitches, um, within their relative pitches, um, sort of reproduce and serve as a surrogate for the
Right.
speech itself.
And
So
so Pierre, okay, great. It's 10 o'clock. So how can people stay connected to you? If you send me the slides, we'll post them on the follow-up call. We're recording this call so folks can join, but kind of what are the next steps? How can we stay connected to you?
absolutely, yeah, I didn't even realize that was the time just
It goes
flew right
fast.
by. But yeah, so just jumping straight, I guess we won't do the jam board, but here's my information, as well as ways for you to learn more about our upcoming co-design clinics, and we'd love to connect with you to talk with you about some of the ways that we might be able to work together. So
And I
thank you
think
again.
this is one example of how like connecting the research summit to the 930 callers to all the work people are doing. So thank you for being the inaugural guest of that connection of somebody that we kind of from outside our kind of typical world. And I think anytime you want to come back, it was so interesting to hear the process that you went through for your work and kind of where you are now. So we so appreciate you joining us and please come back anytime.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we will see folks next Monday. Have a great weekend and take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.